I need to tell you something that still doesn't feel real, something that changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. So, a few months ago, I got a call from a law office in another state. The woman on the phone said, "Miss Carter, you've been named in a will." I actually laughed. I thought it was a scam. I don't have rich relatives. My family barely owns a car that runs. But she insisted. She even sent official documents. Apparently, an Arthur Mallory, who had recently passed away, had left me his entire estate. A mansion. A car collection. And, according to the letter, a personal message, just for me. The problem? I had never heard of Arthur Mallory in my entire life. I called my mom that night and told her. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then she whispered, "Arthur Mallory? That name. I haven't heard it in decades." Her voice trembled. "He's your grandfather." That's when everything started unraveling. When I was a kid, my mom never talked about her parents. She always said they were gone. I thought she meant dead. Turns out, my mom ran away from home when she was 17 after a huge fight with her father, Arthur. He was a powerful man in a small town, the kind of man people both respected and feared. Apparently, he tried to control every part of her life. When she refused an arranged marriage to one of his business associate's sons, he cut her off completely. She left, changed her last name, and never looked back. And somehow, decades later, he left everything to me. I flew out there a week later. The mansion was like something from a Gothic novel. Tall windows, ivy crawling up the brick, rooms filled with old furniture and portraits of ancestors I didn't recognize. There were dozens of people outside the gate, distant relatives, journalists, and some angry-looking men in suits. Apparently, the rest of the family was furious. Arthur had several children and grandchildren, but he'd left nothing to them. Not a cent. I was the outsider. The stranger. And now I had everything they thought was theirs. Inside the house, I met Mr. Lang, Arthur's lawyer. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He handed me a small sealed envelope with my name on it. Arthur's handwriting. It said, "To my granddaughter, the only one who might understand why I did what I did. Don't trust anyone in this town until you've read what's in the study." Of course, I went straight there. The study was a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. It was locked, but the lawyer gave me a key. Inside was a room covered in dust and silence. There were boxes of old letters, photo albums, and one locked drawer in the desk. I found another key taped under the drawer. Classic movie stuff, right? When I opened it, I found a thick folder labeled Project Alera, Confidential. What I read inside didn't make sense at first. It was a collection of letters, financial documents, and legal contracts, all signed by Arthur. But what shocked me were the medical records. They were my mom's. From the year I was born. That's when I realized something was off. The document said my mom had been in a special care facility for psychological treatment after childbirth, but she'd never told me that. Even weirder, there was another name listed under Child Custody Authorization, Arthur Mallory. He had legal custody of me for 6 months after I was born. I froze. What the hell was going on? That night, I called my mom again. She broke down crying. She said she didn't want me to ever find out. That Arthur had taken me from her after I was born, said she was unfit to raise me. He only returned me after she threatened to expose something about him. Something about his business. She wouldn't tell me what. Over the next few days, I started receiving anonymous letters at the mansion. One said, "You shouldn't have come here." Another said, "Leave before you end up like him." I showed them to the lawyer, but he just sighed. "Miss Carter, your grandfather had enemies. Let's just say his empire wasn't built honestly." That night, I couldn't sleep. I went back into the study to look for clues, and behind one of the paintings, I found a hidden safe. Inside, cash, old photographs, and a small flash drive. On the drive were recordings. Audio files. In one of them, Arthur's voice. "If she ever finds this, tell her the truth. I did terrible things. I ruined lives. But she deserves a chance to make it right." The next morning, I called the police. But before they arrived, the house was broken into. The study was trashed, the safe emptied. The flash drive, gone. The only thing left behind was a single note on the desk. "You were never supposed to know." The police said it was probably burglars. But I know better. Someone didn't want me to find out the truth about Arthur Mallory. I sold the mansion a month later. I didn't take a penny from the inheritance, every dollar felt poisoned. But I kept one thing, the letter he wrote me. The part that still echoes in my head. "Blood doesn't make you family. Truth does." Sometimes I wonder what really happened in those lost years of my life. Sometimes I think the real inheritance wasn't the money, it was the truth I was never supposed to find. And if you've ever found out something that completely changed how you saw your family, what did you do? Would you have stayed to uncover everything, or walked away like I did? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story made you think, please subscribe, hit like, and share it with someone who loves true stories. Because honestly, I'm still not sure what I'm doing. When I sold the mansion, I thought I was done. I thought I could just walk away from all the madness, the secrets, the threats, the sleepless nights. But I was wrong. Because 3 weeks later, I was served with a lawsuit. Arthur's other relatives, his children, his nieces and nephews, had decided that I had fraudulently claimed the inheritance. They wanted everything. Their lawyers accused me of manipulating an elderly man with cognitive decline. They said I must have tricked him into signing a new will. The irony? I had never even met him. At first, I laughed. It was ridiculous. But then came the messages. The phone calls. Voicemails from blocked numbers whispering things like, "You don't deserve his money." Once, I found a note taped to my apartment door. "You can't hide forever." I went to the police, but they couldn't do much. No direct threats, they said. So, I changed my number. I deleted social media. I stopped answering unknown calls. But the court date was set. The first hearing felt like walking into a shark tank. Their side had 5 lawyers, expensive ones. They showed up in perfect suits, confident smiles. My lawyer, bless him, was a local attorney I could barely afford. He was kind, though, and honest. The relatives sat behind them, glaring at me like I'd burned their family alive. One woman, I think she was my mom's half-sister, leaned over to another and hissed, "She doesn't belong here." The judge listened patiently. They claimed Arthur wasn't of sound mind. That I was an imposter. That my so-called mother wasn't even his real daughter. They had forged documents, fake witnesses. It was insane. My lawyer stood up and quietly said, "Your Honor, the DNA test confirms a direct biological link between Miss Carter and Mr. Mallory." That shut them up. But it didn't stop the harassment. A week later, someone broke into my car. They didn't take anything, just left a note on the seat. "This isn't over." I started sleeping with the lights on. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to noises in the hallway that weren't there. My anxiety was through the roof. I started therapy just to hold myself together. Then, one day, I got a letter from Mr. Lang, Arthur's old lawyer. It contained a new piece of evidence, Arthur's recorded video statement. He had filmed it 2 months before his death. In it, he looked straight into the camera and said, "To anyone who challenges my will, I made my decision with a clear mind. The others already took enough from me. Claire deserves a chance to start fresh. Leave her alone." The judge watched that video in silence. Then looked at the other side and said, "Case dismissed." I cried. Not because of the money. Not because I'd won. But because, for the first time, I felt like maybe Arthur had cared about me, even if I never got to know him. After the ruling, most of the relatives disappeared. But one, the half-sister who'd glared at me in court, actually approached me in the hallway. She said, "He always talked about your mom, you know. He regretted everything." Then she walked away. That single sentence stayed with me for weeks. Regret. Maybe that's what all of this was really about. A man trying to make things right, too late, but still trying. I donated half of what I inherited to a local foundation that helps young single mothers, the kind of women my mom once was. It just felt right. I kept the rest, not for luxury, but for peace. I bought a small house by the coast. I paint, I read, I sit on the porch and listen to the waves. Sometimes I think about Arthur. Sometimes I still wonder what he was trying to tell me in those missing recordings. But I've stopped being afraid of not knowing. So, that's where I am now, Reddit. Alive, stronger, and, somehow, free. It's strange how the ugliest things can lead to something peaceful. Would you have fought like I did? Or would you have walked away from all that chaos? Tell me in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and hit like if you want more true stories like this. Your support means the world. Because after everything that's happened, I'm still not sure what I'm doing. But at least now, I'm not afraid anymore.